Hi everybody, my name is Ellie. I'm from the Turquoise Squirrel Patisserie, and today I've got something cool for you. I want to show you how you can cover thin dummy cakes with fondant and get nice crisp edges on that. Hope you'll enjoy it, and let's get started. Let's get started. Let's cover this this little dummy tier in fondant. Get sharp edges so it looks nice and beautiful. Before we start, let's just quickly chat how I use these in cakes. So either I would use this as a baseboard to actually attach my cake to, or I oftentimes use these as steps in between tiers. So I'll show you a couple of pictures so you know what I mean, and then you know what they're used for, because otherwise what's the point, right? Okay, what we need obviously is our little dummy round. So this is a 7-inch and it's 1 inch tall, but you can use any size you want. It's just a matter of that it's quite a thin band. You know, you can use this very same technique for cakes that are, you know, up to the same height as they are in diameter. Then it starts getting difficult with the draping method. But this technique technically works on if this was a 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch. It would work fine. If it was a 7-inch that's 7 inches tall, I would use my paneling method, the seamless paneling method that I teach in another class. So I wouldn't necessarily use the draping method like I will in this class for cakes that are really quite tall. Okay, so that's the dummy. Okay, obviously we need fondant. I've got here the Petty Nice Bakels white fondant, and it's really my preferred brand. It's quite cheap and it's quite consistent, so I really love using it. So that's what I'm going to be using, but try it with whatever fondant you've got at home, as long as it's not super sticky and just too gooey, if that makes sense. So it needs to have a little bit of firmness to it. So this is perfect, smooths out beautifully, so I'm going to be using this. Then obviously we need fondant smoothers as well. I've got these cheapies. They are really just so great to use, and I've gotten myself some of these which are at a right angle, so you can't ever have dipping in little lips or weird stuff happening with your cakes, because you can't really do that unless you try hard. If you push down, then it's always going to be perfectly straight up and down. Wonderful. Another thing that you need is actually a really sharp little knife, so you can cut your fondant. Normal kitchen knife will do, but these cutters are really good because you can actually get new blades going all the time, so you want it to be super nice and sharp. You need a normal cake board, so one of these silver ones is absolutely fine. You can also use an acrylic disc. This is just to turn our cake onto. A tape measure is of good use because then you can measure if your size of fondant is the right size. We obviously need a rolling pin as well. So a nice heavy one is good, heavy duty. For bubbles, I like to use syringes because they're cut at an angle, they're very sharp, and they really pierce through the bubbles nicely without leaving much of a mark. Then I want to have a lovely little sock filled with cornstarch. And I have a bowl here that I put my fondant underneath like so it doesn't dry out. And then last but not least, I've got here some normal baking paper. If you want scissors for that, that's fine, but we don't need to cut it in a specific size, so I usually just tear it and then make the baking paper look absolutely horrid. And now really the last thing we need is a little spritz bottle with boiled cooled water inside. I just want to make sure that you all know, don't have rings or nails or hair open. Obviously, if you make this for customers, no cats dancing on your work surface, bad idea. Just make sure that everything is food safe. This is just something for you because you have to look at all this the whole day. So I just wanted to make it look halfway decent. Okay, alrighty, let's get going. I have got here my fondant, and before we start anything, always, what do we need to do? I'm sure you've heard me say this before. We need to knead our fondant. So let's do that. It's going to look a bit strange because I'm sitting down and I'm looking a bit strange when kneading this fondant, but I hope you can see properly. I have kneaded this fondant previously as well, so it is a lot softer already. So you would need to probably just knead your fondant ever so slightly longer than I am at the moment. Okay. And we really don't need much fondant. This is probably going to be way too much. So, but it's fine, rather way too much than far too little. That's always the rule of thumb with either ganache, buttercream, or fondant. Rather have too much, too little is a really bad call. Okay, then I'm going to just press it out like this with my hands. I'm going to just dust my work surface with a little bit of cornstarch. See how handy that little sock is. And then I'm going to roll out my fondant. And keep turning your fondant. And you can try to keep it in a round shape, but mine always end up somewhat squarish. But that's just me. And you want to get it to about 3 to 4 millimeters thickness. Usually if it's normal cake, I usually like to do it to about 2 to 3 millimeters, but oftentimes what happens with these is that the pattern on the dummies actually starts showing through, so you obviously don't want that, and therefore I'm making it ever so slightly thicker than it should be if it was real cake. But I mean, how many portions are going to be in this? You're not going to make this from real cake. Let's be real, right? Okay. If you make it for real cake, go for it. But then I would actually roll this fondant ever so slightly thinner. Sorry, I can't even roll properly because I'm sitting down. Okay, so it's a nice thickness. It's about 3 millimeters, somewhere there. Okay, see what stupid rings do. So don't have rings on. It's very bad habits. Okay, I saw a bubble earlier, but now it has kind of disappeared on me. I'm okay with that, that's fine. Okay, so you can just take your rolling pin and just roll over it. Rather than rolling like so, you can just brush over your fondant to smooth it out as well, which is a great idea. Okay, now what I want to do, if you, while you're talking or doing something, you can cover this up with a little bit of a piece of silpat or something, just so it doesn't dry out. But I'm going to be quick. Hopefully I am yapping, but I'm going to spritz this little guy with some water. You can also, if you like, spritz the actual fondant, but I sometimes find that with this method, then you don't know exactly where to stop with the spritzing. Okay, so you just need to be a bit more careful with actually how much water you're putting on here. If you're running into trouble, it might just be that it's too little water if it's not sticking, or if it's sliding around and making weird lips and stuff, it might just be that you've put too much of the water. Okay, I'm going to spritz it over here. Okay, now I don't know if you can see, but there's just a thin layer of water on here. Okay, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my fondant and slap it on. There we go, easy as that. And I mean, now the nice thing is this is not so tall, so we don't actually need to tuck in so many folds like we usually do with fondant, right? So that's why I love the draping method on this. Okay, I'm just brushing around the cake at the moment. It's not really a cake, but bear with me. I'm probably going to call it cake a lot of time because, right? So I'm just brushing around it just to smooth down the edges. That's all. Now I'm going to grab my fondant smoother and start smoothing out the top. So it's really, really lovely and super, super smooth. So the top is perfect. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Ooh, there we go. Alrighty, now that we've just barely covered our cake, what we want to do is just take this cutter and roughly just go once around, about roughly 1 inch or less around, but you don't want to go directly onto the edges as yet. Take the rest leftover fondant and put it away so it's safe. So I'm going to put it under my bowl so it can chill over here. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to grab my cake board and I want to grab myself a piece of baking paper. Here I've got my piece of baking paper. It's making a horrible crinkly noise. All you need to do or make sure of is that it's nice and flat, so it doesn't have creases in it, and that it's bigger than the piece of dummy that you're working on. I'm going to put the piece of, what is this? I'm going to put the piece of baking paper onto the board, and I'm going to just take this little dummy and flip it over, and immediately I want to just push up those edges so they don't pull down the fondant. Okay, and then now what I want to do is start working around the whole fondant with this guy first and then with this fondant smoother. You can use either, but I usually like to use them in conjunction. First, what you want to do is, and I'm going to work this side, usually what I would do is I'll work like this, but because the camera is there and I want to make sure that you guys can see properly, I'm going to be working like this as if I was ganaching or butter icing the cake. Okay, so what you want to do is just push down. Can you see at the bottom here? There is a little shadow. And what you want to do is let that shadow disappear. So just push the fondant smoother down. Just make sure you don't tilt your fondant smoother, because then you're going to get weird rounded edges or lips or something strange. So there we go. Can you see the shadow disappearing there? Let me see if I can do it over here again. So do you see this shadow under here? That one right here. Oh, this is obviously from the lamp in front of me, but this one right here, that is where there's still a rounded edge. So what I want to do is push the fondant down until there's no more shadow. See how it's disappeared? So that's what you want. Okay, and once you're around, now you can use this fondant smoother. Okay, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna probably do this with my left hand. So now I just want to turn the cake around and work this fondant smoother down the sides. And what will happen oftentimes is that you'll find that a little bit of fondant will push right at the bottom and will almost push through, and that's fine. We're going to cut that off. That is absolutely fine. So I'm going to just be working on this side because I can't actually work with on the other side. So I'm pushing down with the fondant smoother. So I'm pushing down with the fondant smoother so it's at a perfectly straight angle and it's not tilting in like this. So I'm just sliding this guy all around, making sure that there's no shadows. So I think you can see what I'm busy doing. So I'm literally just doing this back and forth motion and going all around, all the while making sure that my fondant smoother is going straight and pressing into the board. So you can just go quickly once around to get it all really nice and smooth. And then you just want to make sure if there are any of those little squigglies. So I don't know if you can see this down here. There's thin little pieces of fondant that are almost sticking over a little bit. All you want to do is carve them off. Easy as that. Then you get a beautiful, beautiful clean ledge. And for that, you really, really, really want to make sure that you've got a super sharp knife. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to cut ourselves a little slit into the fondant, like so. Again, super sharp knife. And now I want to push the knife in, like so. And a nice long blade is good, so you can just let the blade rest on top, because then you know that you're not cutting like this. You are cutting perfectly straight. You can even, if you have a super long knife, do this with one finger at the top and the other one supporting here. And then I'm just going to cut all the way around. If it's super sharp, it cuts easily like that. If it's not, what you might need to do is push inward. Push the knife inward, like so. So it depends on if your knife is nice and sharp. See how nicely it cuts? Ooh, it's beautiful. There we go. Perfection. Put your fondant away immediately so you can reuse it. Okay, and now it's the moment of truth. We're going to turn this guy upside down. Or right way up, whichever, I mean, it's going to go right way up now, right? Okay. And I'm just going to grab it and turn it upside down. And we can see that it's looking pretty decent. So now we can go back in and make sure that it's perfect. I'm going to take it off the baking paper. And now what I want to do is just make sure that the rim again goes all the way to the bottom. All the fondant goes all the way to the bottom, because this way we won't need ribbons or anything to hide our fondant. And we can still just go over parts and make sure they're perfect. And try not to put too much pressure on the top, because you really want to make sure you're not getting any weird indents here at the top. But yeah, I'm going to go all the way around like so, and just make sure there's no shadows right at the bottom. And then last but not least, once you're happy with it, you can put a little non-slip mat under here so it doesn't slide around on you so much. Now it doesn't matter, there will be a shadow again because we're raising this little guy now, right? Okay, and then now what I want to do is just go around the top and just make sure that is perfect. And then just gently go all around the sides. And then what I find very important is to take this guy and get it on eye level and make sure that the silhouette is looking nice. What we want is this beautiful sharp edge, a beautiful clean top, and there we go. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put that aside, let that dry, and then I'm going to use it on my cake. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it's going to help you with getting sharp edges on skinny little cakes. Dummies. Cool.